Hi, I'm Kalia Malie, and today I'm going to be telling you about three Northwest coastal tribes. I'm going to tell you about the Nuchinut, Chinook, and Wiyut tribes, some basic facts about their culture, as well as specific parts of their culture, such as food and language, and finally I will conclude with where they are today. Alright, first up, the Nuchinut tribe. Some basic facts. They are indigenous to the Pacific Northwest coast of Canada. Nuchinut means all along the mountains and sea, which describes where the tribe resides. Today there are 14 Nuchinut nations divided into three regions: northern, southern, and central. I'll be telling you about the northern. Juan Jose Perez Hernandez was the first documented encounter with the Nuchinut tribe in 1774. Him and his men did not settle there. Firstly, I'll tell you about how they gathered their food. The Nuchinut were chiefly hunter-gatherers, mostly depending on the ocean for fish, such as salmon and halibut. However, they also caught shellfish. In addition to sea life, this tribe also hunted game such as deer and elk and gathered plant foods when available. Parties of hunters would travel in canoes. Because of the jagged nature of the Canadian coastline, there were plenty of inlets that they would stop in to make camp, fish, and hunt before returning home with their bounty. There are three recognized dialects of the Nuchinut language: northern, central, and southern, one corresponding to each of the regions of the Nuchinut inhabitants. Traditionally, the Nuchinut were divided into ranks: nobility, commoners, and slaves. Generally, people lived in large, multiple family homes that had permanent wooden frames. These structures often had carvings on posts both in and outside. They were most often painted as well. The Nuchinut homes were very important and held a great deal of symbolism. Inside, the large structures were divided by wooden boards and fire areas, separating individual families from one another. The chief's home would have been much larger and more ornately decorated. It was the chief who made decisions regarding the politics of the time and economic choices that would affect the whole tribe. Similarly, the head of the household would make important decisions in regards to protection and the well-being of their family. Arts and culture. Known for their impressive woodwork, including totem poles, canoes, and multi-family homes, the Nuchinut tribe took great pride in their creations. Historically, they would use cedar for their woodwork, regarding it as tree of life. Their canoes were especially important to them since they were one of the only Northwest coastal tribes who practiced whaling. Like many other tribes, the people of the Nuchinut had many different ceremonies that they performed each year. One of the most well-known and particularly elaborate was the wolf ritual that they performed every winter and taught members of the tribe about heroism, life, and death. Here are some examples of Nuchinut woodwork and a mask that would be used in a ceremony such as the wolf ritual. Alright, contemporary life. In 1958, the Nuchinut Tribal Council was founded and is currently providing services like child welfare, education, and employment training to approximately 9,500 registered members. The Nuchinut are generally active members of their society. Protecting their rights to fish and hunt on traditional territories is one of their main objectives. In July of 2013, the British Columbia Court of Appeals ruled in favor of the Nuchinut commercial fishing rights. They are still currently seeking self-government. Next up we have Chinook. Here are some basic facts. The Chinook Nation is compiled of 5 western Chinookan tribes, including Lower Chinook, Clatsop, Willapa, Wakikam, and Cathlamet. The Chinook tribe resides in the Lower Columbia River region, and the Chinook Constitution is one of the oldest tribal constitutions, written in 1951. Chinook jargon was a trade language that was very prevalent in the Northwest. Whidbey Island was one of the first settled places by non-native people. It also became one of the first places that used Chinook jargon in the Puget Sound. Some white people who were involved with the trades started using Chinook jargon, and it became part of their vocabulary. Chinook jargon, the trade language of the Northwest Coast, was a combination of Chinook with Nuchinut and other Native American, English, and French terms. Over time, explorers, traders, and settlers helped the language spread far and wide. The Chinook's location facilitated contact with northern and southern coastal peoples as well as with interior groups. Because of this, they were famous as traders with connections stretching as far as the Great Plains. The Columbia being their most important asset because of its great salmon population. Many groups, Indians and white people, traded with the Chinook for dried fish. Some other valued trade items were new Chinook canoes and shells, which were highly valued as hair and clothing ornaments. Chinook culture. Controlling the northern mouth of the Columbia, the Chinook were an important Indian people. They lived in permanent settlements of plank houses rather than tribes. They used tattoos to decorate their skins and reshaped their heads. This drastic change in their appearance led to the nickname of flatheads. Along with body modifications, totem poles were a very important part of their culture. They were one of the only tribes of the Northwest Indians who erected totem poles. These poles would be carved with animals that symbolized their guardian spirits. All right, next I'm going to touch on Lewis and Clark. In late 1805, the Corps of Discovery, a special unit of the U.S. Army forming an integral part of the Lewis and Clark expedition, started traveling down the Columbia River in search of the Northwest Passage. Along the way, they met many different Indian tribes, one of which being the Chinook tribe. Lewis and Clark were informed by the Nez Perce that the Chinook tribe were of a different culture and language than they had ever experienced before. The Chinooks had encountered white men and European goods previously, helping the first meeting to go peacefully. On October 26, 1805, two Chinook chiefs decided to offer gifts of deer meat and root bread cakes. In return, the expedition gave them medals and trinkets, which created a sense of peace between them. However, as the winter of 1805 and 1806 went on, things between the two groups became tense. The Corps suspected theft, which started to deteriorate the relationship between them and the Chinooks. Tempers were on edge and violence seemed to be close. There was some peace after a meeting between Lewis and a Chinook chief, who blamed the trouble on a select few, but it was short-lived once they found a saddle which was stolen up the river. The Corps left at the end of that winter and returned to Nez Perce County without firing a shot. Contemporary life. Today, the Chinookan people are very proud of their long history and rich culture. They still practice traditional ceremonies such as the salmon ceremony. Their members are active in sharing the tradition of storytelling, with a monthly gathering set aside just for that. Next up, we've got the Wiyot tribe. Some basic facts. The Wiyot tribe is located in Humboldt Bay, California. They believe in a deity named, that's his name, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, so I will be referring to him as the deity. Their diet consisted mainly of fish, game, and vegetation when available, and the Indian Island Massacre of February 1860 is the largest massacre in their history, killing about 200 of their members. All right, the Wiyot tribe has been located in the Humboldt Bay, California, for thousands of years, traditionally living in permanent villages along waterways, which served as travel and trade routes. The northern coast of California provided plenty of vegetation and fish. Seasonal camps were made in more mountainous areas, which provided berries, acorns, pine nuts, and game to hunt. Next, I'm going to tell you about the Wiyot creation myth, and once again, I'll be referring to the deity as the deity. In the beginning, there were no trees, animals, oceans, or people, and because of this, the deity became sad. He decided that there should be people. The deity used no tools. He simply put his hands together, created man, and gave him a boat. However, the first men were incorrect, and unfortunately they ended up drowning. The second go-around, he decided that man should have 10 lives, so that once he became an old man, he could become a boy again. However, that didn't work either. Finally, he wanted the good people to have children so that old men could pass on the ways of life to them. At the same time, in other places all around the world, the deity created tribes, and this is why there are different tribes and languages. He gave the people water, plants, and game. The deity gave them winter and summer, when the darkness and light shifted. He gave them everything they needed to thrive and survive. Indian Island Massacre. In February of 1860, the Wiyot tribe had assembled for the annual World Renewal Ceremony, which lasted anywhere from 7 to 10 days. At night, the men would replenish supplies, leaving the elders, women, and children. Under the cover of darkness, some local white men armed with hatchets and knives rode to the island and brutally murdered nearly all the sleeping Wiyot. Estimates of the dead ranged from 80 to 250 in that night's series of orchestrated massacres. Although the white men involved were locally known, no charges were ever filed. Remaining Wiyot temporarily took refuge at Fort Humboldt, where nearly one-half died of exposure and starvation. The World Renewal Ceremony. Since the last World Renewal Ceremony was brutally interrupted in 1860, the Wiyot people had not performed it in 150 years. That is, until March of 2014. Since there were very little survivors of the massacre of 1860, little is known about the ceremony. The tribe did their best with what little they know about it. However, they took solace in other tribes by borrowing some knowledge and dressings from the Yurok, Hupa, Tuluwat, and Karak tribes. During the ceremony, the ritual dance would be performed for several hours. The Wiyot people took this opportunity to let this experience relinquish the pain and anger they held onto after the events of 1860 and bring back the tradition of the World Renewal Ceremony. This is just a timeline of the Wiyot people. After many devastating massacres that occurred well into the 20th century, the Wiyot people were far from gone. In the early 1900s, a church group purchased 20 acres in the Eel River estuary. In the Eel River estuary for homeless Wiyot people. This land became known as the Table Bluff Rancheria of Wiyot Indians, which has since become known as Old Reservation. In 1991, during another lawsuit regarding drinking water contamination and other sanitation issues on the Old Reservation, the court mandated new land be purchased and the tribe moved to the present 88-acre Table Bluff Reservation. The original 20 acres are still under the tribe's jurisdiction. The two reservations are within 1 mile of each other. Today, the tribe has approximately 600 registered members and is still growing. Wiyot people are actively recovering the old ways, including language, ceremony, and life ways. At the same time, they acquire new trades, skills, and graduate from college, become artists, doctors, lawyers, teachers, and professions in a variety of fields. The tribe is also dedicated to preserving Native history and culture material of their ancestors. So, in conclusion, today I told you about some basic facts about the Nuu-chah-nulth tribe, the Chinook tribe, and the Wiyot tribe, such as what comprised them and where they lived. We also touched on some specific facts about their culture, including language, food, and beliefs, like the creation myth of the Wiyot tribe. Lastly, we ended with where each tribe is today and what they're doing in contemporary life, such as their current goals and recent victories, like that of the Wiyot tribe performing the World Renewal Ceremony in 150 years. I learned a lot doing this presentation, and I hope you did too. Thank you so much for listening. Here are my works cited.